Hello my beautiful friends, welcome back to my channel. It is so good to have you back here again for a new episode. And if you are new here, hello and welcome. Why don't you stick around to see what kind of shocking but also very interesting true crime story I have for you today. And of course, please do subscribe to the channel. Now before I get into the case, I have to give out a channel disclaimer that my channel is not meant to disrespect any of the victims or the families of the victims that I talk about in these videos. The information that I share with my audience is simply just research that I got from different sources of the internet and just compiled into a single video. The main purpose of my channel is for educational and awareness purposes of the different types of crimes that we face on a daily basis. And the content warning is that in this episode, I will be talking about murder, kidnapping, as well as sexual assault. So if you are sensitive to that type of content, then viewer discretion is very much advised. Now last week I didn't really upload a new episode because I had to focus on a personal matter that I had to take care of, but I couldn't wait. I swear I couldn't wait to come back and create new content for you guys. So in a way, you could say that I was missing you. So let's see what kind of shocking story I have for you this week. Now this week's case has been a cold case for over 2 decades. No one has any real answers as to what could have happened on that day. So I wonder just what kind of questions it's going to leave you guys with. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you all about the mysterious case of the Piercy sisters. Edna Piercy was born on August 13th in 1985, and she was the daughter of Janine Wendell Lottering. And just after a year of her birth, her baby sister Blanche Piercy was born in 1986 on August 11th. And then lastly, both welcomed a new baby brother by the name of Alan in 1987. Their family was thought of to be a happy family, and the kids were also seen as happy kids who were very close to each other. However, when the kids turned 6, 5, and 4, that's when their parents decided to go their separate ways. Janine ended up marrying a man named Johnny Lottering, hence in the beginning I mentioned her name as Janine Wendell Lottering. And it was said that Johnny became a father figure to her kids because according to my research, after Janine and their biological father got separated, the man just wasn't really that involved in his kids' lives anymore. So Johnny sort of stepped up and became the father figure to all of Janine's kids. The family spent a lot of its time in Kempton Park in Midrand. And Edna as well as Blanche went to a primary school known as the Kraft Primary School in Kempton Park. It was said that as Edna grew up, she grew up to love singing and dancing. She would often take part in a lot of school competitions, and she actually won a lot of them. She would be awarded with gold certificates, so you could tell that she really loved what she did. But in her future life, she wanted to be a primatologist and a conservationist. And her mother said that she loved to dress well. She always looked after herself, took care of herself, and she had this favorite hairstyle of hers where she would use hair gel to spike up her hair, and she did this so much that they gave her the nickname of Porcupine. It was also said that Edna and her stepdad Johnny were very close. They had such a close bond that Edna would confide in Johnny whenever she was facing any challenge in her young life. She always found him to be the kind of person that she would talk to, that she could talk to whenever she was going through something in her life. So that's how much of a close bond she had with her stepdad. When it comes to Blanche, her mother described her as a much more quiet kid compared to her sister Edna, and she loved long distance running, and she also had a very soft spot for babies and younger kids. So even though she was a bit of an opposite from her sister, who was more out there, who was more extroverted, they still were very close as kids, and they also spent a lot of time together. In early of 2001, the family had to move to Rustenburg from Kempton Park to Rustenburg because Johnny was pursuing a work opportunity that he got in the mining industry. And at this time, Edna was 16 years old and Blanche was 15 years old. Janine worked as a branch manager for the Central News Agency, But now that they had to move from Kempton Park to Rustenburg, she had to put in a request to be transferred to the branch that's in Rustenburg. But it seemed like everything went well for them, and the kids got enrolled in Grenswach High School, and they started living their new life in East Street in Rustenburg. Their house was about 1 kilometer away from the kids' high school, so in most cases the kids always had to walk to and from school every day, but they always walked together in a group, never alone. And it was also said that Edna and Blanche actually managed to fit in quite nicely at their new high school, and they managed to make some friends, and they were very much liked. So much that even to this day, a lot of their friends still remember them, even though they last saw them 20 years ago. So that's how well liked they were. And it should also show you that they were some very good people. On October 12th in 2001, Edna was getting ready for a school camp that she was going to go on later on that day. It was on a Friday. So in the morning, she was busy getting ready, and that was the last time her family was going to see her until she came back on Sunday on the 14th of October, because she had to go to the camp immediately after school. So as she was getting ready in the morning on Friday, she also had to say goodbye to her family. So the day finally came for her to come back, and it was on October 14th in 2001 on a Sunday. So when she got back, Janine was still at work, but Johnny was at home at that time. And Blanche, as well as their baby brother Alan, were not at the house. So now it was just Johnny and Edna at the house on that Sunday. When she got back, she told Johnny that she had to go to a friend of hers to go get her school bag, because when she had to go to the camp on Friday after school, she decided to leave her school bag with a friend of hers who was not going on the camp. So now that she was back on Sunday, she had to go get her school bag from that friend's house. And it was said that the kids wouldn't normally go anywhere alone. They would always walk together no matter what. But since Blanche and Alan were not at the house at the time, Edna had no choice but to go get her school bag on her own. And when she left, that was the day her family would never get to see her again. When Janine got back from work, she took a nap and woke up a few hours later. When she noticed that Edna was still nowhere to be seen, that's when she and Johnny started getting worried. But she also had hopes that Edna would contact her like she always does whenever she's running late or if she's going to be coming back home late. So as she waited and the hours kept on going by, they started to get even more worried, and this is when they decided to go to the police and report her as a missing person. After she was reported missing, it was also confirmed that even though the last time she was seen, she said that she was going to a friend's house to go get her school bag, she never actually arrived at her friend's place. So whoever took her or whatever happened to her happened before she even got to where she was going. And at first, it was almost believed that she could have just decided to run away from home, since, as you may or may not know, that is something teenagers are very well known for. But the evidence gathered from the investigation of her disappearance just couldn't prove that to be the case. This is because when she came back from the school camp, she came back with everything. And when she left to go to her friend's place, she didn't take anything that she would need if she was ever planning to run away. And it was also mentioned that while she was on camp during the weekend, she was also calling her family, telling them that she couldn't wait to come back and tell them all the things that have happened on that camp. So it really didn't sound like she was ever planning to run away from home. Then on the 15th of October, a day after she was reported missing, her family started putting out missing person flyers for her, and they were talking to anyone they could in the neighborhood or in the nearby areas, trying to find out if anyone could have seen or heard any sign of her, but no one could give them any useful information about where she could have gone or who she could be with. It was as if she just disappeared into thin air. Then in January of 2002, just a few months after Edna went missing in 2001, her mother Janine received a strange message from an unknown number. And this message made itself seem like it was coming from her missing daughter Edna. And it was saying that Edna was somewhere in Port Elizabeth living with her boyfriend and his mother. But Janine never recalled her daughter ever having a boyfriend at that time, and even her friends confirmed that she didn't have any boyfriend from Port Elizabeth at that time. So this message was quite strange. And when Janine showed this message to her husband Johnny, they decided to go to the police and try to see if they can get any help about it. And the police tried to see where the message could have come from, and it was actually discovered that the message didn't come from a phone in Port Elizabeth. It actually came from a phone in Rustenburg. So in my opinion, it gives rise to the theory that she could have been abducted by someone, and whoever abducted her tried to throw off her search into the wrong direction, because by this time it was well known that Edna was a missing person and her family was looking for her. So maybe whoever abducted her actually tried to send this message and make it look like it came from her in Port Elizabeth, so that people can start looking for her in the wrong place. That's my opinion about what this message could have actually been for. But after this, neither Johnny or Janine ever received any other strange message that was made to seem like it came from Edna in some faraway place. But even after this, even after months of her disappearance, no other development was ever made by investigators, and there still weren't any answers about what could have happened to her. And in June 7th of 2002, Janine and her family never knew that they were about to suffer another major blow, despite what they've already been through so far. On that day of June 7th in 2002, both Johnny and Janine were not at home. They were still at work. Alan was also not at the house, and then later on in the afternoon, Blanche came back from school. So this meant that she was home alone on that Friday afternoon, and when she got back, a colleague of her mother's came to drop her 2 kids that she needed Blanche to help her babysit. Then later on in the day, she came back to take her kids, and then when she did that, Blanche was once again left alone in the house. Blanche had a boyfriend at that time, and the guy just lived across the street from her house. And the boyfriend, along with his father, both said that they saw her standing outside the gate of the house talking to 2 young boys, and a neighbor also testified to seeing Blanche that day. However, that was the last time she would ever be seen alive again. Janine came back from work between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. that day, and Blanche was still nowhere to be seen. And much like her sister Edna in the previous year of 2001, it was as if she vanished into thin air. Janine and Johnny started looking for her, and they got no clues as to what could have happened to her. And her house keys were still left inside the house, which means wherever she went, she never meant to stay there that long. Then on July 14th in 2002, a woman was walking on a field on the outside of Rustenburg, on the outskirts of Rustenburg, when she came across a pile of rocks and sticks. And when she got closer to look at this pile of rocks and sticks, she actually saw a human hand sticking out of it, and she ran from the scene looking for the police, and that's when she told them exactly what she saw. And when police got to the scene, they started removing this pile of rocks to see what could be underneath. And as they did this, they started seeing that under these rocks and sticks was the body of a teenage girl. The teenage girl was beaten to a point where she couldn't be recognized just from looking at her, and she was also found naked from the waist down. And later on, it was confirmed that this was the body of 15-year-old Blanche Piercy. And it was also confirmed that she had to have suffered some major blunt force trauma to her face for it to be found in the state that it was found in, and it was also believed to have been the cause of her death. When her body was examined, it was determined that Blanche was killed on June 26th in 2002, after she went missing on June 7th in 2002, which obviously means before she got killed, she was held captive for over 19 days. And another thing that was discovered was that her body was still in a very good condition, like it hadn't decomposed that much. And after more examinations, it was discovered that her body must have been stored for about 11 days before she was dumped where she was found. She was found just approximately 1,600 feet away from a local restaurant, so it was very evident that she would have been discovered sooner or later by anyone because she wasn't that far from the public. And since Blanche was found naked from the waist down, investigators started theorizing that she could have been sexually assaulted. And indeed, after more examinations were done on her body, it was determined that she was indeed sexually assaulted. And as a matter of fact, investigators traced 3 male DNA profiles inside of her body, which meant that she was assaulted by more than one person. And when it came to who killed her, either one of those people could have killed her, or they could have all taken part in it. Because remember, when she was found, it was discovered that she was beaten to a point where she was unrecognizable. So they could have all taken part in it, or one of them could have decided to do it. And when investigators started looking at the fact that her sister Edna was reported missing just 9 months before she was found dead, investigators started to believe that there could have been more to this case than meets the eye. So after she was discovered, investigators started interrogating Johnny and Janine, and their house was searched from top to bottom by forensic investigators for any clue that could tell them what could have happened to Blanche that day. Because more often than not, in cases like this, investigators would have to start by looking at the people who are close to a victim, especially if the victim is as young as Blanche was, at only 15 years old. So they would have to first look at the people who knew her or people who were close to her. Johnny's clothes were also taken by the forensic investigators to be analyzed for any evidence that could tell them about what happened or what could have happened to Blanche. Because at first, investigators not only believed that Johnny had something to do with the disappearance of Edna in 2001, since she went missing when she was alone with him, they also believed that he could have had something with the disappearance and murder of Blanche Piercy in 2002. But even though Johnny was home alone with Edna when she went missing in 2001, he was not home when Blanche went missing in June 7th of 2002, because at that time he was still at work. But despite of all that information to be considered in the case of Blanche, he still was not ruled out as a suspect in the case. And another thing is that they never found any physical evidence on his possessions that could tell them if he was involved in the case or not. But again, he still wasn't taken out as a suspect. And another thing that made it strange that the police saw Johnny as a suspect in the murder of Blanche was the fact that when Blanche went missing in June 7th of 2002, we know that she was held hostage for about 19 days because her autopsy reports revealed that she was killed around the 26th of June in 2002. And again, it was also reported that when she was found, her body was still in a very good state of decomposition. And it was discovered that she had to have been stored in an environment that would sustain her for over 11 days after she got killed, because her body hadn't decomposed as bad as it should have when she was found. So if you really think about it, it makes no sense that Johnny would kidnap Blanche, then hold her hostage for 19 days, and then kill her and then store her body for another 11 days before getting rid of it, because he lived every day with Janine and her son Alan. So it really makes no sense that he could be involved in this murder whatsoever. And again, remember, investigators found 3 male DNA profiles inside the body of Blanche, which led to them finding out that she was actually sexually assaulted. And it was also reported that the DNA samples of Johnny, Janine, and Alan were taken, and since no arrest was made after that, it could only mean that they didn't get a match from those DNA samples, which also shows that it was quite impossible for Johnny to be the suspect in this case. Because again, if you look at all the factors, it just makes no sense. But at one point, it was also reported that there was a time, just 3 months after Edna Piercy went missing, when Blanche spoke to a friend of hers and told this friend that she and Edna had actually been victims of sexual assault since they were very young. But she never revealed the identity of this person who allegedly sexually assaulted them. So of course, without a solid identity of who this person was, it was being speculated that the person that she could have been talking about was her stepfather, Johnny. So this could have been the reason the police wanted to believe so badly that Johnny was the man they were looking for. But Janine denied every last one of these sexual assault allegations that were being spoken about. She said that if anything like that was happening in her own house, she definitely would have done something about it, and she definitely would have taken the necessary actions to ensure that it never happens to her daughters again. And it also turned out that Janine actually grew up in an abusive environment when she was still young. And when she compared it to the sexual allegations that were going around about Johnny, she said that when she was being abused, she did everything she could to avoid contact with the person who was abusing her. So it made no sense that these girls would always want to spend time with Johnny every chance they got. They would always try to find him, be with him, be around him. So it made no sense that he would be sexually assaulting them and they would still want to spend time with him, because they had a very good relationship that I mentioned in the beginning. Edna and Johnny were very close. She would confide in him whenever she was going through something, and it was also even said that Johnny actually considered Blanche as his favorite, even though he loved the kids equally. So it made no sense that they would have such a good relationship while he was sexually abusing them. So again, Janine denied all these sexual assault allegations that were being put out about Johnny. So in my opinion, it seemed like the media, the public, as well as the investigators were very narrow-minded about the cases of these two girls. They didn't want to consider any other possibility other than Johnny being involved in this. But I think the fact that in just a span of 9 months, 2 girls from the same house just went missing, and then one of them was found murdered, could have been the reason that police felt like they had enough reason to believe that Johnny could have had something to do with this. Because if you do think about it, it's really quite strange that both girls from the same house would go missing in just a span of a few months. But again, no evidence was found that Johnny was ever involved in this. And when it came to Edna, it was also reported that she worked part-time as a waitress for a local wedding venue. And it was also said that more often than not, there would be this co-worker of hers, a much older man, who would always be pursuing her, trying to get her number. And he did it so much that at this point, you might as well call it harassment, because whenever she would say no, he would just keep coming back. So if you ask me, there was something that was also worth investigating, because I've also heard of cases where a woman would get attacked or killed by a man who just couldn't handle being rejected by her. And as a matter of fact, I've also covered a similar case here on my channel, and it was episode 15, and if you haven't seen it, I will link it up here for you to see. But the point is, it's very much similar in some parts to this case. And also, guys, in my opinion, it's very possible that something like this could have happened to Edna in 2001. And another thing that came to my mind when I got to this part was that strange text message that Janine received in 2001 after Edna had gone missing. And if you remember correctly, that message said that Edna was in Port Elizabeth living with her boyfriend. But also, when police tried to see which phone the message could have come from, they found out that it was not in Port Elizabeth, but it was actually a phone in Rustenburg. And again, Edna worked in Rustenburg along with this co-worker of hers who kept pursuing her, not taking no for an answer. So it's quite possible that he could have been the suspect all this time, but I don't think that was ever investigated, and we'll never truly know what could have happened with that lead. And when it came to the disappearance and murder of Blanche Piercy, it seemed like she could have been taken without any struggle, because at the house there weren't any signs of forced entry or any signs of any struggle. Because of course, if someone had just barged into the house and tried to take her by force, something would have just shown that there was a struggle or there was a fight that happened in that house, and she could have been taken by force. But there was no evidence of that, so again, nothing in the house could have happened that day. And since she was alone at that time before she disappeared, it's quite possible that whoever took her actually tricked her to come outside, out of the yard, and then get into a car if they were traveling by a car. Because again, no one saw her go anywhere. Only the neighbor and her boyfriend and his father said they saw her and she was still just standing outside the gate. So whoever took her surely could have lured her into their car and then drove off with her. And since 3 male DNA profiles were found inside her body, it was also believed that she could have been a victim of human trafficking. But it's also quite possible that she could have just been taken by a group of 3 random criminals who were looking for a victim that day. But these were just theories that were put out there because we don't really know what could have happened for sure. So if you have a theory of your own, you could just let me know what you think in the comment section below. But all we could have so far are just theories and speculations. But you see, my biggest question when it comes to the case of Blanche is, wasn't there any match made on the police database when they found those 3 DNA profiles that were collected from the crime scene? Couldn't they just make any match on their database to anyone who could have been arrested in the past? And if it was a matter of technological challenges, since this case happened over 20 years ago, then today we should be more than equipped to deeply analyze those DNA profiles to see if we cannot get any match from any of the database that we have in the country. Because another thing that I'm thinking is, if Blanche was attacked by just random criminals, then maybe they could have gotten arrested at some point in the past 20 years, and their DNA samples could have been in the system. So if they could try to analyze them one more time, maybe they could find a match. So I'm just wondering if that has been done once again in the investigation. I just wonder. And when it comes to the disappearance of Blanche's sister, Edna, it's quite unfortunate that there weren't much leads to be followed in her case. Because like I said in the beginning, it was as if she just vanished into thin air. There wasn't much to work with. And all we have are just theories of what could have happened to her. And of course, the main theory that was talked about the most was the sexual assault allegations that were put out against her stepdad, Johnny. But remember, Janine disapproved every last one of those allegations. She denied anything like that ever happening. So it sucks that we don't have any definite answers of what could have happened to these girls over 20 years ago. It's very, very saddening. But it's very important for us to keep talking about these cases, especially cases that remain unsolved, because you have no idea the kind of power that word of mouth actually has. The more we keep talking, the more someone out there who might remember something might actually come forward and talk. And that might actually lead to an arrest being made or the case finally being solved. So we really have to keep talking about these cases. And if anyone out there could just remember something about this case, I really, really hope that they would contact the authorities with the information that they could have, no matter how little it is, because it might lead to something even bigger. But that is all I have for you guys for this week's case. I would love to know what you guys think about this one. What do you think happened to the Piercy sisters in October of 2001 and in June of 2002 in Rustenburg? But thank you guys for hanging out with me again today. I appreciate your support. It means the absolute world to me. And again, if you are new here, please be part of the family and subscribe to the channel as well for more true crime content. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next episode. So until then, take care of yourselves, enjoy the rest of your day, and cheers.